No one starts a billion-dollar restaurant empire by accident, and no one builds it by playing safe. Long before Texas Roadhouse became the place packed with long waits, loud music, and hand-cut steaks, it was just an idea. An idea born in a small town, inside the mind of a man who had already failed more times than most people are willing to admit. This isn't a story about luck. This is a story about stubborn belief, painful mistakes, and a vision that refused to die, even when everything else was falling apart. Before the neon signs and the lines out the door, there was Kent Taylor, and at one point, he was almost finished. Kent Taylor didn't come from restaurant royalty. He didn't inherit a famous brand, and he didn't have investors lining up to back him. Early in his career, he was just another ambitious guy trying to make something work in an industry that chews people up and spits them out without apology. He'd worked in restaurants, learned the operations, and believed he understood what customers wanted. But belief alone doesn't pay the rent. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Kent had already opened and failed with multiple restaurant concepts. Some didn't attract customers, others were poorly positioned. A few simply ran out of money. Each failure left behind debt, doubt, and the quiet pressure of people asking, "Maybe this just isn't for you?" By the early 90s, Taylor was close to giving up. He was financially stretched and emotionally drained, carrying the weight of past failures. But instead of quitting, he did something that would change everything. He went back to the basics and asked one dangerous question: what if everyone else is doing it wrong? At the time, casual dining in America had a clear formula: quiet dining rooms, soft lighting, polite background music. Taylor hated that. He believed restaurants had lost their soul. He believed people didn't just want food. They wanted energy, personality, and an experience that felt real, not rehearsed. And most importantly, he believed steak had become boring. Steakhouses were either too expensive and stuffy, or they were bland chains serving frozen cuts. Taylor saw an opening that others ignored. What if there was a place where the steaks were real, the prices were fair, and the atmosphere felt like a celebration? That idea became Texas Roadhouse. But an idea is the easy part. When Taylor first pitched it, investors were not impressed. Loud music, peanut shells on the floor, line dancing servers. It sounded chaotic and risky. Many believed families wouldn't like it, and adults wouldn't take it seriously. They were convinced it would fail outside of a few Texas-themed towns. Taylor didn't listen. In 1993, the first Texas Roadhouse opened in Clarksville, Indiana. Not Texas, not a major food city, Indiana. That choice alone confused people. Why open a Texas-themed steakhouse in the Midwest? Taylor believed location mattered less than execution. If the food was great and the experience unforgettable, people would come. The early days were brutal. The restaurant didn't immediately explode with success. Money was tight, and every decision mattered. Taylor obsessed over details. He insisted on hand-cut steaks, even though it was more expensive. He demanded fresh-baked bread made in-house, even if it slowed things down. And he fought to keep prices affordable, even when margins were razor-thin. One wrong move could have ended everything, but slowly, something started to happen. Customers didn't just eat at Texas Roadhouse. They talked about it. They brought friends. They came back. They told stories about the place with the crazy energy, the music, the dancing, and the food that tasted better than it had any right to at that price. Taylor realized something powerful. People weren't just paying for steak. They were paying for emotion. As more locations opened, Taylor made a decision that went against almost every corporate instinct in America. He refused to centralize everything. Instead of controlling every restaurant from a distant headquarters, he empowered local managers. He gave them ownership stakes. He wanted them to think like owners, not employees. If the restaurant succeeded, they succeeded. That culture became the backbone of Texas Roadhouse. But growth came with pressure. Expansion means risk. More locations mean more money on the line. And for a man who had already failed, Every new opening carried the fear of repeating history. Taylor didn't hide from that fear, he used it. He remained deeply involved, visiting stores, talking to employees, and watching customer reactions like a scientist studying an experiment. Still, success didn't come overnight. Some locations struggled, some markets didn't respond as well as others. And behind the scenes, the financial stress never fully disappeared. Texas Roadhouse was growing, but it was growing carefully, deliberately, almost stubbornly slow compared to competitors who chased rapid expansion. That patience would later become one of its greatest strengths. By the late 90s and early 2000s, Texas Roadhouse had found its rhythm. The formula worked. Affordable, high-quality steaks, a loud, unapologetic atmosphere, and a strong internal culture. Customers felt welcome, not judged. Families felt comfortable. As the brand expanded, it became clear that Texas Roadhouse wasn't just surviving trends, it was resisting them. While other chains cut costs by lowering food quality, Taylor doubled down on freshness. While others chased automation, he invested in people. While competitors softened their identity to appeal to everyone, Texas Roadhouse leaned harder into who it was. That decision came with critics. Some said the brand was too loud, too messy, too unpolished, but customers didn't care. In fact, that rough-around-the-edges authenticity became the brand's signature. By the time Texas Roadhouse went public in 2004, it had already proven something rare: consistency. Investors finally saw what customers already knew. This wasn't a gimmick. This was a system built on experience, discipline, and an emotional connection that spreadsheets couldn't measure. The IPO gave the company access to capital, but Taylor remained cautious. He didn't chase explosive growth just because Wall Street wanted it. He stayed focused on food quality, culture, and long-term trust. That restraint would separate Texas Roadhouse from many chains that expanded too fast and collapsed under their own weight. Behind the success, however, the pressure on Taylor only increased. Running a public company is different. Every quarter is judged. Every mistake is magnified. For a founder who cares so deeply about culture, the fear of losing control never went away. He fought to protect the company's values, even when it meant pushing back against investors and analysts. What most people don't realize is that the biggest battles in the history of Texas Roadhouse didn't happen in the dining room. They happened in boardrooms and late-night meetings, in moments where Taylor had to choose between faster profits and long-term integrity. Those choices would shape everything that came next. As Texas Roadhouse grew into hundreds of locations, expanded beyond the U.S., and quietly built a financial empire, the cost of leadership began to show. Success came with weight. Pressure came with consequences. And the men who refused to quit after failure now carried the responsibility of thousands of employees and millions of customers. This was no longer just a restaurant story. It was a test of whether a rebellious idea could survive success without losing its soul. Because surviving when you have nothing is hard. After its 2004 IPO, the spotlight on Texas Roadhouse intensified. Wall Street demanded relentless growth, analysts wanted predictability, and competitors were watching every move. Each new restaurant wasn't just another location. It was a test of whether the brand could scale without breaking. And founder Ken Taylor knew something many others learned too late. Expansion doesn't forgive mistakes. The pressure to grow faster was immense. Casual dining chains were racing to plant their flags in every market, obsessed with speed. But Taylor resisted. He had seen what reckless expansion did to other restaurants, how it destroyed quality and culture. He decided Texas Roadhouse would grow, but only on its own terms. This decision slowed things down, and the critics noticed. Some investors questioned why they weren't opening stores faster, worried the brand would miss its window of opportunity. Taylor didn't argue. He stayed focused on the restaurant floor, not the noise outside. What set Texas Roadhouse apart wasn't just the food or the atmosphere. It was how deeply the company invested in its people. Store managers weren't treated like replaceable parts. They were trained extensively, trusted with real responsibility, and given ownership incentives. This created something incredibly rare in the restaurant world, leaders who cared as much about their location as the founder himself. But giving people autonomy comes with risk. You have to accept unpredictability. Not every manager made perfect decisions. Some locations struggled with consistency, others with staffing or rising costs. Growth exposed weaknesses that just didn't exist when the company was smaller. Meanwhile, the entire industry was changing. Customer expectations were shifting. Health trends came and went, and economic uncertainty was always looming. Many chains responded by cutting costs, shrinking portions, and using lower quality ingredients to protect their profits. Texas Roadhouse chose the opposite path. Instead of compromising, they doubled down. The steaks remained hand-cut. The bread stayed fresh. The portions stayed generous. The experience remained loud, energetic, and unapologetically different. Taylor believed customers could sense when a brand stopped caring. Once that trust was broken, it almost never returned. This philosophy wasn't cheap. Food and labor costs rose, and profit margins tightened. But something else happened. Customer loyalty deepened. People didn't just visit Texas Roadhouse. They defended it. It became their place. A restaurant they trusted for family dinners and milestone celebrations. A place they returned to without a second thought. As the company expanded into new states, regional differences tested the concept. What worked in the Midwest didn't always translate perfectly to coastal markets. Some areas embraced the high-energy atmosphere instantly, while others needed more time. Taylor paid close attention, making careful adjustments without ever sacrificing the brand's core identity. Behind the scenes, the pressure of running a public company grew heavier. Quarterly results mattered. The stock price mattered. The expectations were relentless, and Taylor carried that weight personally. He wasn't some distant executive in a boardroom. He was deeply involved, emotionally invested, and constantly pushing to keep the company true to its roots. Then came the moments that separate strong companies from fragile ones. Economic downturns hit, and when money gets tight, restaurants feel it immediately. Many chains suffered sharp declines, closing stores, and even going bankrupt. Texas Roadhouse felt the pressure too, but it had a secret weapon: the discipline it built during years of cautious growth. Instead of panicking, they leaned into value. Their affordable prices combined with quality food became a lifeline for customers who still wanted to dine out. While competitors struggled to fill seats, Texas Roadhouse kept drawing crowds. Another turning point was their marketing. The company didn't rely on flashy national ad campaigns. Instead, it focused on local engagement. Grand openings felt like huge community events. Employees danced, celebrated, and created an energy that advertising dollars just couldn't buy. Word of mouth became the brand's most powerful tool. As the company grew past hundreds of locations, expanding outside the United States entered the conversation. International markets were a huge opportunity, but also a huge danger. Different cultures and tastes could easily dilute the brand. Once again, Taylor chose patience. International growth would happen, but it would be careful, selective, and without sacrificing quality. While the company thrived, few people saw the personal toll it was taking on its leader. Kent Taylor was known for his intensity and his relentless drive. He cared deeply, but that level of commitment came at a cost. The long hours, the constant pressure, the responsibility for thousands of employees, it all weighed heavily. Despite this, Texas Roadhouse entered the 2010s stronger than ever. Revenues climbed, new locations opened steadily, and the brand became one of the most respected names in dining. Investors who once doubted the slow growth strategy now praised its consistency. But success brought a new challenge, protecting the soul of the company. As organizations grow, distance can form. Founders step back, systems replace instincts, and culture can quietly fade. Taylor was determined not to let that happen. He fought to stay connected to the stores, the employees, and the customers, believing that leadership wasn't about control, it was about presence. Then the world changed. The global pandemic shook the restaurant industry to its core. Dining rooms closed and revenue vanished overnight. Texas Roadhouse was forced to make decisions no one had prepared for. The crisis tested everything the company claimed to stand for. And while it was a painful period, it also revealed the true strength of the culture built over decades. As restrictions eased, something remarkable happened. Customers returned. Quickly, Texas Roadhouse locations reopened to packed dining rooms, long waits, and renewed energy. People were craving familiarity, connection, and experiences they could trust. The company delivered exactly that. Financial performance rebounded, growth resumed, and the brand emerged from the crisis not weakened, but reinforced. But behind the triumphant recovery, tragedy struck. In 2021, Kent Taylor died by suicide after battling severe post-COVID symptoms, including debilitating tinnitus. The news shocked the industry. The man who built one of America's most beloved restaurant chains was gone. The loss raised a single critical question. Could Texas Roadhouse survive without the man who shaped its very identity? The answer wouldn't come from a press release or a stock chart. It would come from the culture Taylor had spent decades building. Leadership transitioned smoothly. The systems held firm. The values remained. The company continued to operate on the exact principles he had embedded into its DNA. Growth continued. Customers stayed loyal. Employees carried the vision forward. Texas Roadhouse proved that a founder's impact can truly outlive the founder himself. Today, with hundreds of locations, a growing international presence, and billions in revenue, Texas Roadhouse is a case study in disciplined growth and cultural loyalty, but the story isn't over. With greater scale come new risks. Competition is always getting tougher, and expectations continue to rise. The question now is whether the brand can continue to balance authenticity with expansion, value with profitability, and its unique culture with corporate reality. The journey from near failure to national dominance was just one part of the story. Texas Roadhouse has survived its early battles, weathered the storms of public scrutiny, and was now a beloved American brand. But for its founder, Kent Taylor, survival was never the real goal. His vision was to build something that would last, a company that could grow and adapt without ever losing its identity. By the 2010s, the challenge wasn't just about opening more restaurants or grilling the perfect steak. The real test was how to scale up without selling out, how to manage financial growth while cementing Texas Roadhouse's place as a true cultural icon. Expansion had always been a careful, deliberate process. Taylor had learned the hard way that growing too fast was a recipe for disaster, killing quality and pushing away loyal customers. But now, with the brand's popularity soaring, opportunities were everywhere. Developers, potential franchisees, and investors were all knocking at the door. The temptation to hit the accelerator was huge, but Taylor stuck to his guns. Growth could never come at the expense of the customer experience. Every new restaurant had to feel just like the original, energetic, welcoming, and full of life, no matter where it was. Behind the scenes, the company was becoming a masterclass in operational excellence. They developed intense training programs to make sure the quality was consistent everywhere. Managers were taught everything from operations and customer service to how to live and breathe the company culture. Employees weren't just workers. They were encouraged to take ownership of their roles, which created a sense of pride and accountability that you just didn't see in other chains. Hand-cut steaks, fresh-baked bread, and top-notch service were non-negotiable. They were the pillars of the brand, even if it meant higher costs or more complexity. Financial discipline was key during this time. As a public company, there was immense pressure to deliver quarterly profits, but Taylor refused to cut corners on quality. Texas Roadhouse found a sweet spot: controlled expansion, consistent operations, and smart cost management. By sidestepping the trap of reckless growth that took down so many of its competitors, the company built a sustainable model that could weather any storm. Revenue climbed steadily, and even the Wall Street investors who once doubted their quirky approach started to come around. The brand's identity also became stronger and more defined. While other restaurants tried to be everything to everyone, Texas Roadhouse doubled down on what made it unique. The loud, lively dining rooms, the line-dancing servers, the peanut shells on the floor, none of it was an accident. It was all part of a deliberate strategy to create an experience you wouldn't forget. Families didn't just go there for a meal. They went there to feel like they were part of something. People came back not for some new gimmick, but for that genuine connection. Slowly and carefully, international expansion started to appear on the horizon. Unlike their growth in the US, the move abroad was incredibly cautious. Taylor knew that what worked in the American Midwest might not fly in Europe, Asia, or the Middle East. They did their homework, meticulously studying potential markets, local dining habits, and the competition. Only when everything lined up perfectly did they make a move, ensuring the brand's soul remained intact, no matter the country. By the late 2010s, Texas Roadhouse had hundreds of locations across the U.S. and was dipping its toes into international waters. Its net worth had grown into the billions. This wasn't a fluke. It was the result of steady growth, smart financial management, and a culture that inspired fierce loyalty. Employees, investors, and customers all felt the strength of a system built on years of learning, testing, and perfecting. But success, as it always does, brought new challenges. The competition was heating up. Other casual dining chains were merging, innovating, and trying to copy the Texas Roadhouse playbook. New places popped up claiming to have hand-cut steaks or a vibrant atmosphere. But Taylor and his team knew that imitation wasn't a real threat. Customers can smell authenticity a mile away. To keep their loyal base, they had to stay focused, innovate subtly, and constantly reinforce the culture that made them special. Technology also became a major factor. Online ordering, mobile apps, and social media were no longer just optional extras. The company had to adapt to modern consumer habits without losing its old-school charm. Taylor's approach was measured: use technology to enhance the human connection, not replace it. They rolled out online ordering systems carefully, and their marketing focused on telling real stories on social media instead of flashy gimmicks. Employee engagement remained the absolute cornerstone of the business. Recognizing that the people on the floor are the ones who create the experience, Texas Roadhouse invested heavily in its staff. They offered training, incentives, and real career paths. Managers were given autonomy and responsibility, fostering that culture of ownership. They carefully nurtured morale, making sure every location buzzed with the same energy and care that the brand was built on. Throughout it all, Taylor was dealing with personal challenges that few people ever saw. The weight of leading a public company and navigating constant market pressures was immense. Yet he never wavered from his core principles: quality food, happy employees, an unforgettable customer experience, and disciplined growth. His philosophy was simple but powerful: if you take care of your people and your product, the business will take care of itself. Financially, Texas Roadhouse became a model of stability. Revenue climbed into the billions. Each new restaurant added to the bottom line while strengthening the brand's culture. Investors loved the predictability and transparency, which was a rare thing in the volatile restaurant industry. The company's value wasn't built on hype or shortcuts. It was built on decades of careful planning and an unwavering commitment to doing things the right way. When the first international locations opened, the brand already had a reputation for quality. Customers abroad were drawn to the same things Americans loved: authenticity, energy, generous portions, and real attention to detail. Each international restaurant had the same DNA as the originals, preserving the experience while still respecting local tastes. This smart strategy minimized risk and made sure the Texas Roadhouse name meant the same thing everywhere in the world. Taylor stayed hands-on through all of this. He would visit restaurants, taste the food, talk with employees, and watch how customers reacted. This leadership style wasn't for show. It reinforced the culture from the top down and proved that success wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It was lived and breathed in every dining room, with every plate served. This combination of financial strength, operational discipline, and cultural consistency set Texas Roadhouse apart. While competitors chased fads or cut quality to save a buck, Texas Roadhouse stayed its course. The result was a fiercely loyal customer base, empowered employees, and a rock-solid financial foundation. A no-growth story is without risk. Markets can change, tastes can evolve, and new competitors are always on the horizon. Yet the systems Taylor built and a culture he nurtured created a resilience that few other brands could ever hope to match. The foundation was strong. The company wasn't just built to survive. It was built to thrive for decades to come. By this point, Texas Roadhouse had transformed from a risky idea in Indiana to a multi-billion-dollar global brand. Its net worth was a testament not just to financial success, but to the methodical, principled approach Taylor had perfected through years of trial and error. Every steak, every loaf of bread, every line dance, it all contributed to something much bigger than a restaurant chain. It was an ecosystem of culture, experience, and excellence. And this ecosystem, built on lessons learned from failure and the wisdom of relentless leadership, would ensure the Texas Roadhouse legacy would endure. As the company continued to grow, the questions changed. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about scale. Could Texas Roadhouse keep getting bigger without losing the energy and quality that made it special? Could its carefully built systems handle the pressure of global expansion? And most importantly, could the soul of the brand survive as the empire reached heights Ken Taylor had once only dreamed of? These were the quiet questions the company would continue to answer, with the same deliberate, thoughtful approach that had guided every decision since day one. How did a single restaurant in Indiana, with peanuts on the floor and servers line dancing in the aisles, become one of America's most beloved and successful dining chains? This is the story of Texas Roadhouse, a tale of relentless focus, unwavering principles, and how an unconventional idea grew into a multi-billion-dollar empire. From its very first location in Clarksville, Indiana, the vision of founder Ken Taylor was crystal clear: serve legendary food with legendary service. This meant hand-cut steaks, made from scratch sides, and that irresistible fresh-baked bread with honey cinnamon butter. But more than that, it meant creating an atmosphere. A place that was loud, lively, and full of energy, a celebration you could walk into any night of the week. As Texas Roadhouse began to grow, the stakes got higher. How do you expand from one restaurant to hundreds across the country without losing that special magic? For Ken Taylor, the answer was simple: you don't compromise. While competitors were cutting costs, Texas Roadhouse doubled down on quality. They kept hand-cutting their steaks in-house. They kept baking their bread every 5 minutes. They invested heavily in their people, creating a culture where employees felt like partners, not just workers. This philosophy of people first was radical, but it worked. Happy employees led to incredible service, which in turn created fiercely loyal customers. Financially, the results were astounding. By the late 2010s, Texas Roadhouse was a powerhouse, with revenues climbing into the billions. Wall Street analysts were often amazed. How could a company that invested so much in its food and its people be so profitable? The secret was the loyalty they had built. Customers didn't just come for a meal. They came for the experience. They knew they could count on a great steak, a warm welcome, and a fun night out. This created a level of customer loyalty that was practically recession-proof. By 2022, Texas Roadhouse had grown to over 700 locations, not just in the U.S., but also carefully expanding into international markets. The key word there is carefully. Ken Taylor understood that reckless growth could destroy the brand. Each new location, whether in Texas or Dubai, had to meet the same high standards. The lively, generous, and authentic Texas Roadhouse experience had to remain consistent, no matter where you were in the world. Then, in 2020, the world changed. The pandemic hit the restaurant industry like a tidal wave. For a business built on packed dining rooms and social energy, it was an existential threat. But Texas Roadhouse adapted with incredible speed. They pivoted to to-go models, creating Roadhouse curbside and butcher shops where customers could buy their famous steaks to cook at home. The brand's deep connection with its customers paid off. People showed up in droves to support their favorite restaurant, proving that the bond they had built was stronger than any crisis. Tragically, during this period of turmoil, the company faced its greatest loss. Founder Ken Taylor passed away in 2021. The visionary leader was gone, leaving a massive void. Many wondered if the company could survive without him. But Ken Taylor had built something more than just a chain of restaurants. He had built an institution. The culture, the systems, and the values he had instilled were so strong that the company didn't just endure, it continued to thrive. It was the ultimate testament to his leadership, creating a legacy that could outlive its creator. Today, Texas Roadhouse continues its journey. Expansion remains deliberate, with new restaurants opening in states like Florida, California, and beyond. The core principles are unchanged. The steaks are still hand-cut, the bread is still baked fresh, and the dining rooms are still buzzing with energy. The company's financial health is stronger than ever, with billions in revenue and a net worth that reflects decades of disciplined growth and customer devotion. But the story of Texas Roadhouse isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's a powerful lesson in authenticity. In an industry obsessed with trends and shortcuts, Texas Roadhouse chose a different path. They focused on what truly matters: quality food, happy employees, and an unforgettable customer experience. They proved that if you take care of your people, they will take care of your customers, and the business will take care of itself. Looking ahead, the road won't be without challenges. Technology, competition, and changing consumer tastes will continue to shape the industry. But the foundation Ken Taylor built provides a clear roadmap for the future. As long as Texas Roadhouse stays true to its core values, prioritizing its people, investing in quality, and growing with purpose, it is poised to not just survive, but to define excellence for generations to come. From a single risky venture to a national icon, the journey of Texas Roadhouse shows the incredible power of a clear vision executed with unwavering discipline. Every hand-cut steak, every warm loaf of bread, and every line-dancing server is part of a system that is so much greater than the sum of its parts. It's a legacy of resilience, authenticity, and a refusal to compromise. And as long as people are lining up for a table, that legacy will continue to grow. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.